Boom, and we're live. All right. Welcome to yet another episode. Well, not yet another, second episode.
Yes, it is. No, you're right. Yes, it is. Yet another. Oh man.
So soon. This episode is going to be focused on basically what happened to Jack Ma and the failed IPO of Ant Financial. Um, as you guys know, Jack Ma has disappeared in the last few days. I actually don't know exactly when he disappeared, but whatever. He's basically unreachable right now, and
As he should.
he should be keeping a low profile. um, but
As he should.
yeah, he is clearly having tea with certain organs of the party state right now. It's unclear which one exactly. Do you want to do you want to speculate on who he's currently talking with?
No, but like first, like let's go back a little bit, okay? So people are just panicking over like the disappearance. It's like, hold on, like people have a very short-term memory, and it shows because this is standard practice. And again, we're talking about like billions of dollars at play and damages and financial stability for the party. So this is just like almost regular. Like it's nothing out of the ordinary that someone like Jack Ma would disappear. I
It's just
don't think the word disappear is the good one. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it's more like low profile, or he's being, I don't want to use the word detained. I want to maybe
he's being interviewed.
uh
Interviewed.
yeah, extensively. Yeah, we're gonna use extensively interviewed because I don't think detain is the right word, because he didn't do a 人之墙, like he didn't go completely rogue off the trails. So he didn't do that, which is good. Otherwise, we would be using the word detained. But now he's definitely just being extensively interviewed, which is very fair. Because in these kind of situations, and again, people forget that like Fan Bingbing like also vanished for like 3 months. People are
And
like, oh man, what happened? Like, yeah, but like that's business as usual. You were talking about like hundreds of millions of dollars of like tax fraud. Like they're not going to interview you for like one day. Like it's going to take more than that.
they also the other, I guess, recent high profile one. I think the problem is that it's usually like people get extensively interviewed, usually aren't as high profile as like a Jack Ma. So when he's
Well,
unreachable,
I mean,
but
let me correct you right there.
wait, because the most recent case I can remember is Guo Guangchang, which was in
Yeah.
2015, I think.
Yeah, it was during the market crash. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
2015. But more recent than that, I think, was the Huai brothers. Although that was very below the radar. I don't think people really noticed that they both vanished, and they got a nice discussion with the party regarding the kind of uh, things they were producing and where subvention money was coming from. But yeah, like again, profile aside, this is not an extraordinary practice. It's kind of, yeah, we would expect that would have happened to Jack, especially considering the circumstances and the money that's at play. So people panicking like, oh man, like money won't save you in China. Yeah, that's the first thing you should learn, like from the whole game. Like money is pointless. Like I don't understand why people are like, oh, you should hire a lawyer. Like, yeah,
That's not
right.
gonna do it.
Like you're thinking in a Western frame of mind. Like this is just dumb. Like just no, that's not how it works. And
This is
again, the uh, people always forget. Like, and we'll talk back maybe about. We'll circle back to the problems of calling the private sector private. We'll come back to that maybe some other time. But what the party gives, the party can take back, and that's what people are more often missing from the picture. What the party gives, the party can take back. The party allows you to do certain things, so you get rent spaces from the party, and at some point, if that doesn't work, well, they can take it back. That's it. It's as simple as that. People are making this way overcomplicated when in reality it's kind of simple.
it's I mean, this is also there's part of a bigger issue at play. Like he's not being interviewed because he did some, some small mistake or pissed off some people. This. I mean, the story is long and
Yeah,
the story is big. That's why
yeah.
he's being, as we say, extensively interviewed, and it all comes back to ultimately why the reasons leading up to the failure of Ant Financial's dual IPO in both Shanghai and Hong Kong, which was announced, I want to say like last year, and then they started prepping for IPO, and it was supposed to be fast tracked, and then it was supposed to list, and again I
Like,
can't remember, November ish, something
oh,
like that.
let's put it this way. Like people were salivating hard in August, and I recall that like let's say last minute evaluation were on the table around that time,
Bro,
and people were just like were panicking, like buying or preparing to buy shares around like like August, September, like just a few weeks before the stoppage. So yeah, I remember that.
yeah, so I think this now we get into the weeds of basically what happened. Um, and the official reason for stopping the IPO, which as they usually do, is because of quote unquote regulatory problems. And I think it's important to note that is not wrong per se. There were definitely massive regulatory issues with Ant Financial as like Ant Financial's operations as a whole. You know,
God damn.
I mean, among those things is you have an e-payment services operating at a de facto bank. It's offering microloans, P2P loans as well, and obviously another thing they're talking about is the kind of monopolistic practices that Alipay and WeChat Pay have dominated the e-payment sector in China for many years now. So, but the thing is, regulatory problem aside, like these regulatory issues are not sufficient in themselves to just stonewall an IPO, because if it was just regulatory problems, the regulators would have gone to Ant Financial the moment they even started talking about an IPO, and kind of the regulators would have, if they were on the good side, the regulators would have like held Ant Financial's hand through the process. Like, okay, you need to solve this, you need to deal with this, because this is a usual IPO process in China. Like you have there's a conversation back and forth between the regulators and the company that wants to list, and the regulators provide them basically like a list of things that need to do before they are allowed to list. This doesn't seem to be the case. It seemed to be something, it seemed to be like basically the party just pulled the rug from underneath Ant Financial's feet. And sudden too. I don't think there was any indication this was coming. But obviously, like we can talk about other indications, but the fact that they would actually pull this IPO, I don't recall any rumors or anything along those lines leading up to the actual event.
Well, I mean, yes and no. But yeah, some things were there, but it was very subtle. Uh, for example, I recall reading the fact that Liu He, even prior to November 2nd, talked with Jack Ma about like potential issues, but apparently Jack didn't really listen. And again, yeah, I mean, again, Liu He only the number one financial dude around. Like she's man for everything related to the economy reform. So you have to listen, but at the same time, you don't really have to because he's only a vice premier. So it's like I get it. I mean, the chain of command, that's not the top guy, but still, he's the head of the Financial Stability Commission. And if he comes to tell you that there might be potential issues, you might have to listen. But apparently, Jack decided not to. And to make matter worse, he decided also to criticize the, let's say, lack of financial system in China, saying that they work like pawn shops. I mean, yeah, sure. Uh, the comments were not really that bad. Like it wasn't that bad, but the way it was said and the fact that it was said kind of directly to it was framed as a response to the Wang Qishan's comment, and this is something you simply cannot do, because at the time Wang Qishan had drank the reform Kool-Aid from Xi Jinping, so he was like, okay, we need to, more regulation and more scrutiny and more surveillance over the financial and economic banking sector. But at the core, Wang Qishan is more of a reformer. But anyway, so at the time he drank the Kool-Aid, and he was just spewing back some propaganda or publicity, whatever you want to call it. So Jack Ma's response was very surprising, and he thought that he could leverage his position as Alibaba and Ant Financial, the economic way. He thought he could just leverage that to push Beijing, which is never a good idea. Like, no matter how big you think you are, again, like it's exactly what Frank said in House of Cards. People don't understand the distinction between real power and simple money. And that's the thing right here. That was a crucial tactical mistake, thinking you're above, or that you can you can fend off the party. Like, no, you cannot. No, you can't. And right now you're seeing the result of that. No, it doesn't work like this. And now they have created even more regulation for the Jack Ma case. And he will be made, this is going to be an example for others to fall in line, follow the party rule. This is not going to work anymore. We're not going to let you grow that much, and you're not going to be able to be involved in the financial sector and in the banking sector that much. And the digital yuan is one of the best example of that.
Yeah, I think one is Jack Ma seems to be spending too much time in Silicon Valley and in the U.S., where he's picked up on the attitudes of American entrepreneurs, which is yeah, I mean, in the U.S. you can do this kind of flex against the government, but he forgot he's ultimately you're playing a different game. You're still in China. Your operations are in China, and in China they play by a different set of rules. And I think that's what happened, is he just forgot where he is and who he is and where his companies operate. But the digital yuan, like you raised, this is a great example, because China is going to be, I believe, the first countries to start using a digital sovereign currency. And basically, honestly, I think in operation, there is really no difference between this thing and whatever they're doing on Alipay and WeChat Pay. The interesting thing is that was 2 weeks ago when who was it, PBOC or something, said that merchants can refuse payment in WeChat Pay and Alipay, not refuse the digital yuan, which effectively makes the digital yuan legal tender. And what this will do effectively is the state has now directly entered the payment space, and it's telling Alipay and WeChat Pay, you guys just chill out. I got this. You guys operate subordinate to me, and you guys only are allowed to exist insofar as as you play ball with me. If you don't, I'll just shut you out completely, because now I have dictated what is legal tender, and I can tell merchants now not to accept payments from your platforms, but they can't refuse from mine because I am literally the state. So, and the pace at which this thing was rolled out, I think, is reflective of the party's attitude towards the dominance of Tencent, which is WeChat Pay, and Alibaba and Alipay in this specific space. And as we know, the party does not like areas where it cannot control or I guess influence to a large extent, and especially when there is critical and crucial information, data specifically, that's being passed between platforms that are not completely visible to the party.
Yeah, and let's say, to circle back to stability and control, this and the speed at which all these new regulations are coming directly towards Ant Financial and the whole system of e-payments, it's also indicative of the party's, let's say, adverse reaction to regional commercial banks having defaulted recently. So the party, as far as it is concerned right now, has a very, very low tolerance for rogue financial actors who could potentially destabilize the whole system. So Jack Ma was just like, let's say, at the wrong place at the wrong time. So you have all like I remember like the Baoshang, the Baoshang Bank, the Jingzhou Bank, the Hengfeng.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. All these commercial banks have massively tested Beijing's patience with like local, sometimes semi-private banking financial institution, like, and then you have Jack Ma coming in like with the bulldozer of like hundreds of millions of transactions and like billions of dollars, if not potentially trillions. I'm not quite sure about trillions, but like hundreds of billions of dollars of transactions. I was like, oh yeah, this is a private firm. Like, yeah, come on, man. Like, like, how long do you think you'd be allowed to, roll out your platform before like they just take out the boot and just stamp right on your face? Like, how long do you think that would go on? Like the party is sometimes slow to catch up to new technologies because as we discussed, I mean, not in podcasts, but uh, in papers and stuff like this, is very slow to react to innovation. But once it understands how to copy or replicate something, it's going to do it much faster than, again, quote unquote, the private sector, which is often left to try to innovate under the guise of party scrutiny, surveillance, and random regulation.
Yeah, and let's circle back to Jack Ma particularly. I think
Yeah.
basically what happened in the course leading up to the cancellation of Ant Financial's IPO was basically, do you remember when that financial conference summit thing in Shanghai was? It was like
Yeah, it was
summer?
late October, like in
Oh,
Shanghai. It was on the Bund Summit. I think it was almost overlapping with the end of the fifth plenum, like around like the 28th, something like that. Like really the last few days of October.
yeah. And that's a watershed moment which even foreign newspapers that picked up like Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and shit, like they point to this moment as being like Jack Ma basically talk shit to the party, and this is what kind of accelerated the party's fury towards Jack Ma and Ant Financial. But fortunately for you guys, we got even more of a backstory to this, and this story goes back to which decade again? The 19.
Oh yeah, you mean like the story of the Jack per
Yes,
se?
yes,
Yeah. So like I mean, let's say okay, regulatory concerns aside, but again, as you mentioned before, very valid. All of that is very valid. Stability, rogue behavior, lending behavior, all of that is very valid. So the formal aspect of what you're seeing in the news, how it's covered, is true. It's very valid. But what makes it even better for the party is, the party does not enjoy, let's say, squaring up against its own companies because it's a nightmare. It's a PR nightmare, and it's also a logistical nightmare because if you want to take Ant Financial apart or even like dismantle Alibaba, it's going to take a massive amount of like manpower, man hours. It's going to be complicated without creating too much ripples. Like this is going to be complicated. It's a huge undertaking. So of course the party doesn't really enjoy doing that. But what why this might be somehow a little, like, let's say, tasty to Xi Jinping is because of the background of Jack Ma and the money that's behind in financial and Alibaba to a certain degree. And let's say for people who's like, oh yeah, no, Jack Ma is just that English teacher from like Zhejiang. Like, no, he is so not that guy. Like, absolutely not. Like, I think it's delusional to think that random dude came into money and then suddenly started up this firm. Like, where does the money come from? Just please. Like, anyway, so let's start with the name, just Ma Yun. Like, the Yun is key to understand at least part of his background. So apparently, and this is somewhat, let's say,
conjecture.
yeah, I mean, we have historical evidence of that. Like, uh, So Chen Yun apparently was a big fan of like.
Wait. Just explain who Chen Yun is, the significance of Chen Yun in the history of contemporary China, basically 49 onwards. Like, explain who he is, because I don't think a lot of people know who he is.
Fair. Let's say that if we know who Deng Xiaoping is as a reformer, let's say the balancing element to Deng Xiaoping is Chen Yun, part of the conservative. So if you also want to talk and dive in 1989, although not the point here, and we won't do that, but let's say that if you want to understand that, like, the use of force and stuff like this, you need to look at the side of Chen Yun and Li Peng. Chen Yun, who was the premier under Deng Xiaoping, but also was his great, let's say, nemesis to a certain degree, I can say. So the leader of the conservative, and one of the reasons why Jiang Zemin was later on named General Party Secretary of the Communist Party of China. So you have all of this balancing in the 80s and the 90s. So you have really the reformers and the conservative, although there are subgroups, but generally speaking, this is how we would categorize that. And Chen Yun is basically one of the two poles. So you have Deng Xiaoping on one side with the reformers, and you have Chen Yun on the other side with the more conservative approach to development, basically speaking. To make a very long story short, because there's so much more, but like, just so we know where we're going with this, at least just so we know, just that. So
yeah, Chen Yun is,
yeah, exactly.
he's no joke. He's no joke. Let's put it that way.
No, definitely not. So yeah, so Jack Ma seems to have some contact with Chen Yun's family, at least in the 60s and the 70s. But Chen Yun, also close to Wang Qishan's father-in-law, Yao Yilin. So it's a very complicated story, but I mean, we'll try to see if we can unpack all of that. We'll see. We'll see. So Jack Ma's father, so it's Ma Laifa, was an important figure in the Zhejiang art scene back in the early 60s. And that's key to understand his link to Chen Yun, like why we're talking about like folk art and stuff like this. Yeah, it matters. It's going to matter. Not right now, but it will. And Ma Laifa is a veteran of the traditional folk art. And at some point, he became responsible for the cultural heritage protection of the Zhejiang province. So again, he's no joke to a certain degree. So Chen Yun, who was shunned during the Great Leap Forward, unless you want to explain what the Great Leap Forward is, I need to move forward because it's going to take way too long to
Okay. Just in 2 sentences, catastrophic failure of economic planning leading to God knows how many millions of death. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. We'll circle back maybe to these historical events later on. So he decided in 1962 to not return to his hometown and to stay in Hangzhou, where Jack Ma's father was very active. And during that period, he patronized a few bookstores and places where you could listen to a pingtan, so a form of maybe a regional traditional music or narrative performance. And of course, during these visits, he would encounter the Jack Ma's father. So from the late 60s onward, Chen would return to Hangzhou almost every year and meet with Jack Ma's father on a very regular basis, especially during the 80s when the grip of the state was relaxed towards traditional and folk art. So Chen Yun would go more often to Hangzhou and Suzhou, where again, Jack Ma's father would be there and they would meet and they would talk. So you have all this during the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, a great relationship that's going to be established between Chen Yun and Jack Ma's father. So you have already that. And that's why I'm saying, like, pay attention to the Yun, because his name is Ma Yun eventually, and it's Chen Yun. So people also speculate that that Jack Ma's father would have given the name of his benefactor to his son, which makes sense because this happens all the time. Other that, or it's Guoqiang or Aiguo or stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's either patriotic or related to someone else most of the time. Yeah. and the ties between Chen Yun and, of course, Jack Ma's father have extended to a relationship between Chen Yun's son, Chen Yuan, and Jack Ma himself. And so much so that Chen Yuan, who was at some point, I think he was heading the development bank from 1998 to 2013, helped Jack Ma several times with Alibaba's and loan, and also provided additional, I think, 1 billion loan to Alibaba to buy back some shares from Yahoo back in like 2012 or something like that, and with preferential treatment and preferential rates. So again, you see this first connection will help dramatically set up shop for Jack Ma, like accessing credit for the private sector, something that's very hard to get by, and suddenly getting 1 billion from the development bank. I mean, that's a massive undertaking when you think that some private companies have to have have secure loans from local people in the past, like giving away IOUs. So this is how bad it was. But no, Jack Ma was able to get 1 billion from the development bank to buy back some shares. And yeah, so let us not forget also, there's so many people involved in this story. It's like, for those of you who are not familiar with names, it's going to be a complicated story to follow. When I used to teach, I used to say don't pay attention to names because it's too complicated, but like the story, to make it juicy, or the juiciest story, you need to follow names and understand who we're talking about. Anyway,
I think, but I think that the easiest way to parse this through is, one strand is the relationship between Chen Yun and Jack Ma's dad, and subsequently their sons.
yes,
And the other strand is a factional variable, which lends way to the Jiang Zemin faction and how they got involved in this part.
Yeah, I guess so. That would be a great split. That would be great. Yeah, because like, okay, from 2007 to 2012, also let's say the disciplinary party secretary for the China Development Bank was also like He Guoqiang's son, and He Guoqiang is part of this extended Jiang Zemin faction, if you want to say. So you have people that are supposed to be looking for a weird transaction already in your pocket. So lending money to the private sector wouldn't have been an issue at the time, especially not for Jack Ma. And let's also not forget that in 2015, and this is a key moment to understand how powerful this connection was. It's like, okay, we're in 2015. Let's say the stock market is definitely not going well, and at some point there's going to be a crash. Some people are going to cry foul and say, "Oh yeah, this was a massive conspiracy to take down the stock market," which is, I mean, somewhat fair. Depends on how you look at it, and the people you can tag in this story, somewhat fair. But in 2015, Ant was able to raise 4.5 billion. And of course, the development bank took part in the fundraising amidst the fact that there were severe, let's say, constraint on the financial sector at the time in China. So it's really an understatement to say that Chen Yun and Chen Yuan, like the family of Chen Yun, supported Jack Ma and helped growing Alibaba, and of course eventually Ant Financial. So most of that is already owed to a certain part of the faction. Of course, you have other players, but in reality, it's not just like an English teacher from Zhejiang. No. He's got extremely powerful friends that are able to unlock loans and finance and subsidies and all these kinds of things for him and his company. So of course, it would make sense that when you look at, let's say, Ant Financial, you'll find all these other players financing Ant Financial as well. So of course, when Xi Jinping sees this, it's like, yeah, so not only are you becoming too big to fail, but this company is technically owned and is profitable for the extended allies of Jiang Zemin, which I'm trying to get rid of since 2013. So that was definitely not a good position to be in for Jack Ma. But again, did Xi knew before? I mean, of course, he probably knew, But I mean, the party is sometimes very slow to react and is sometimes overly focused on the political landscape, so provincial and ministries, state council, all of that. And by the time you look at the private sector or financial slash banking companies, you realize like, oh yeah, like I really let this one slip through. I didn't pay attention. Or one of the other maybe conclusion is maybe the backers of Ant Financial didn't leave enough room for allies of Xi Jinping to be able to benefit from the Ant Financial IPO.
Yeah, one thing I mean, it's not just the extended allies of Jiang Zemin, right? We have evidence of Jiang Zemin's family
Yeah,
holding a stake in Ant Financial.
through
One of the
Boyu.
Boyu Capital. You guys can look this up. Boyu Capital was an early investor in both Ant Financial and Alibaba. And who founded Boyu Capital? None other than Jiang Zemin's grandson. So
Alvin. His name is Alvin.
I think his name is Alvin
Jiang Zhicheng.
Jiang Zhicheng. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure his dad, so Jiang Zemin's son,
Jiang Yangheng.
probably also got some action in these investments too, because lest we forget, this dude fucking dominated the telecoms, and
he's still dubbed the telecom king.
Yeah,
to this day he's still dubbed the telecom king.
So and so again, we have direct evidence of Jiang Zemin's family, not just his allies, but Jiang Zemin's family itself having a stake in both Ant Financial and Alibaba. So again, if you were to let Ant Financial have a historic IPO in Shanghai and Hong Kong, you are effectively just funneling more money into the pockets of your rival faction, which Xi Jinping is definitely not keen to do, because why the fuck would you? And
yeah, and let's say like let's push forward in this direction, because you have Boyu Capital, which was an easy target. Like you could identify that one easy, but it's also said that CITIC Capital, which employs Liu Yunshan's son Liu Lefei, also backed Jack Ma. And again, you don't need to know exactly his Liu Yunshan, but like he's the old propaganda tsar prior to Wang Honing. Long story short, but again, this is one of Jiang Zemin's men. And if you push a little bit further, you can also say, and some really strongly suggest, that New Horizon Capital, led by Winston Wen, was also in Alibaba. And who is Winston Wen? You might wonder. Well, I mean, it's Wen Jiaobao's son. So that really doesn't look very good for, especially people like Wen Jiabao, but it doesn't look good for Xi Jinping himself, because like you're letting sons or grandsons of people that you're trying to purge mount an amazing IPO, like about was like 37 or 38 billion US dollars right in your face, and you let that happen. I mean, it's pretty good to say like, okay, you waited at the last minute to just like stop the IPO. Again, you're giving way too much credit to Xi Jinping if you think that. He probably realized at the last minute, like, okay, yeah, we need to do something about that. People saying like, no, it was just a cruel way to just shut him down. Yeah, you just give too much credit to planning and tactics. You just give too much. So you need to see it like who gives money to who. Again, like the development bank provided loans for ZTE, and ZTE was founded by one of Jiang Zemin's associates. And again, think about it. These are semi-private or sometimes private firms who are getting massive amount of loans, which usually, like, they can't get a penny. It's so complicated to get money as a private
let me
firm.
Just explain quickly why that's the case. Okay, so
yeah, sure.
China has a very weird banking structure whereby we all know there's a prevalence of shadow banking in China, and this is directly a response to the fact that private enterprises are largely cut out of traditional forms of financing through the country's largest state-owned banks. And this is largely due to the fact that these banks have a mandate to only lend when there's sufficient collateral, which is fair. I mean, whatever, okay, in terms of risk management, that's very fair. The problem is if you're a startup, you probably have nothing, right? If you're a private enterprise and you just starting, you have no collateral to put up, which means you can't get any loans. Instead, ultimately, this ends up favoring the country's state-owned sector, because now, let's say you're Sinopec or your Chem China or whatever, Sinochem, you have as much collateral as you ever need for any kind of loan you want. So you just have the state-owned commercial banks funneling loans to state-owned companies, and there's just a process that basically shuts out rest of the private sector, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, which are especially exposed to shadow banking, because like these guys probably can't even get loans at regional banks, let alone the big four or sometimes big five in China. So this is a reason why we are highlighting the fact that Alibaba and Ant Financial and ZTE getting loans from China Development Bank, which isn't even a commercial bank. This is a policy bank. The bank has a specific mandate to loan to certain things, and you can be hella sure that ZTE is not on the list of mandates that China Development Bank is supposed to loan to. So there are political connections being leveraged in order to secure these loans for quote unquote private enterprises.
Absolutely. Like I said, Jack Ma, let's say, benefited a little bit less from the loans, but when you look at the $20 billion loan to ZTE, you're really raising your eyebrows like wow, like there has to be something there. And yeah, there was something there. And there was one more thing I almost forgot, and this is for people who paid attention to the Ren Zhiqiang case. For those of you who are not so familiar, the big cannon red, the guy who literally insulted Xi Jinping back in March regarding the way he handles the pandemic and stuff like that. Let's make it very short. Okay, so he was brought to trial in September, and I think he was sentenced on the 22nd of September, something like that. Anyway, so Ren Zhiqiang is one of the close friend of Wang Qishan, and that caused some tension, some frictions between Xi Jinping and Wang Qishan. But there was one more thing that people sometimes forgot when it came down to Jack Ma. So we said that he was very close to Chen Yun's son, Chen Yuan, but something that people sometimes overlook is the fact that Chen Yuan was the first chairman of the Huayuan Group back in the 80s. So he's one of the super close friends of Ren Zhiqiang. So all of these guys, they all know each other. So the fact that you would let slide Jack Ma would look even worse, because you just jailed one of the dude that's probably in cahoot in all of this. And like you can't leave more of them just slide by. You can't do that. And yeah, so people just forget, like, yeah, the Huayuan Group, like, oh yeah, he used to be that great developer, and like they got him for like I think bribery and I think
or some shit like that.
Yeah, but oh yeah, that was unfair. Like, are you kidding me? That was unfair. That was uncalled for. It was just because he stood his ground to Xi Jinping. I was like, no. Okay, maybe that's the main reason, but at the same time, no.
Still
like
guilty.
Corruption.
Still
like,
guilty.
Yeah, of course. In the end, you're still guilty, because like, how the hell are you getting all these development contracts in Beijing?
Yes.
Please do tell how you're doing that without any sort of bribery. Like the real estate sector in general, like, come on, like it's all about bribery and local officials that are able to give you plots versus bribes. That's the way it works most of the time.
The funny thing is, like, this is not a phenomenon just in China. I think real estate anywhere in the world is
probably. But I mean, the people who say like, oh man, like it's so bad for free speech. Yeah, okay, I get it for the free speech part, but at the same time, just I mean, you need to remain nuanced about this thing, because he was definitely guilty of a lot of these things. And why didn't he just stand up and like try to appeal the decision? Because he knew, like, this is family style, baby. So when you get through for this, just open your mouth one more time, and your family's gonna just follow you. So don't just take it like a man. Just take it like a champ, and just move on. Move on. And to be fair, I think he was sentenced to like 18 years. He's gonna do some of that, but I think most of it's gonna be done in like what is it called?
House arrest?
Yeah, it's gonna be done in house arrest at some point. So I mean, take it easy. Take it easy.
Yeah.
And unlike others, most of his assets were not like seized and like no. I mean, it's not that bad. Like you
I
need to
think
be
they took
nuanced
like
about that.
maybe $1 million or something from him.
That's nothing. That's nothing. Anyway, just people don't understand, and sometimes they're like,
And
"Oh, yeah, that's very unfair." No, I mean it's not that unfair
wait,
because
just
the
wait.
corrupt. Yeah,
People forget recently, like a couple days ago, Lai Xiaomin, former head of China Huarong, which is one of China's largest state-owned bad debt
yeah.
man. This dude, they sentenced his ass to death.
But I don't know if they will go through with that.
But wait. Today, I think it just came out today. Hu Huaibang, the former,
Yeah,
who is he?
yeah. I remember Hu Haibang. Yeah,
Yeah, he got life today. I think they gave him life today. So
yeah, but that makes sense. Usually, it's for cases like that, you'd expect life or, I mean, the death sentence.
suspended death, maybe. I don't know.
I think it will be suspended because, like,
I don't really think they have the appetite to execute Lai Xiaomin. That'd be a little rough.
I mean, the only way or the only reason you would do that is because of the information he has regarding assets that are, let's say, in certain hands, and that would be the only reason why I would see his execution as like a probability
Yeah, I think okay.
because
Now,
he knows way too much. Let's put it
oh
this
yeah,
way, like
yeah.
like not only about bad or let's say like opponents, but also about the people in position. So that's one of the people I mean,
He's too
I'm
valuable.
sure it's valid, but it's I think yeah because they want to know where the other money is, but at the same time it's like we can't risk he sings like a canary about where our money is. So it's a complicated situation.
Go
I'm
for
sure some people are pressing for the execution as we squeak right now.
we the next big thing to like finish off this shorter episode is people have been asking us, what's next for Ant Financial and Alibaba and Jack Ma. So I think the easiest one is okay. What's next for Jack Ma? I think he's gonna reappear
Yeah,
sometime. He's gonna
yeah.
reappear, and his tone is gonna be 100% different from what he was singing before, and he's gonna if he's smart, he'll change his tone, make some public statements, and then just let himself fade into the memories of of Chinese.
But he started already saying like, okay, they can take whatever they want. But that
Yeah,
was like that like it's too little, too late, pal. Like
yeah,
that should have been the deal before.
yeah. See now, okay, that's good because now we can talk about what's going to happen to his empire. And financial, I think we've said this multiple times. If it even is allowed to IPO again, that the fucking fundamental value of this thing is completely lost. There's no point buying in. There's really no point. The hype around it is going to be dead. Its valuation is probably going to be cut in like half, and it's not going to be something worth investing for in terms of value. Um, and
No, because and also because since the party will have access to all the information and the data, I mean, foreign investor will be like, okay, so basically, I'm buying into one more state-owned enterprise, or I'm buying into the party's surveillance apparatus. So, I mean, it's definitely not going to look good to have that on your portfolio, knowing what's coming.
yeah. Now the bigger question is Alibaba, because Ant Financial is still subsumed under Alibaba.
Mm.
Even though they don't like to admit it, it's still part of Alibaba. Um, so the question is now there's antitrust or anti-monopoly investigations into not only Alibaba, I don't think, but the wider Chinese tech sector, right? Because after Jack Ma pissed off the party came after the entire sector. Like people forget that shit like
Oh,
Tencent,
he's
Meituan.
gonna lose some friends over this.
Oh
Like
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
his
yeah.
friends were just like, man, like why couldn't you just enjoy your money and just shush? Like you couldn't. You had to go rogue. Like
Yeah,
why?
like
Why?
Meituan and Ma Huateng at Tencent are they're
Yeah.
not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy about
Oh,
this.
but they didn't side. They didn't side with him at all. Like they
No.
came out, I think, in the first few days, like, oh no, but like we're ready to play ball and like we're good and like whatever you need, we'll provide. Like they were begging, like, please don't come here, please. Like you could feel the anxiety in the air. Like, oh man, oh,
Yeah, and with Alibaba, like, I do you think they're going to go with dismantling or just taking some kind of de facto control?
I mean, I would expect that for more like Ant Financial to be either renamed, restructured, or if you understand my comparison, it could be something like Apple acquiring Beats.
Okay.
So like dismantling slowly Beats and taking away the key technologies that you need and rebranding them as Party, kind of. Because now Beats is just like, who remember Beats now? Like Beats was something great. Now it's just headphones
Yeah.
because everything that was good about Beats became Apple something. So I would expect that if you really want to avoid ripples and issues, especially regarding private debt, because like if you touch that, the system will just crash. So you can't do that. And it's just the roots of N Financial are so deep in that sector right now that you just cannot kill it. So if you dismantle it, it could be an issue. So taking what's important and rebranding under state banks or state institutional financial institution, that could be the way to go. Alibaba, on the other hand, is a different story because Alibaba solves a very important problem in the supply chain. Because let's face it, remove Alibaba, and a lot of the manufacturer or buyers from overseas will have extreme issues in terms of sourcing their things. Although, to be fair, Alibaba itself as a platform is absolute ass.
It's
But,
so bad.
but, but it's still better than no Alibaba, which tells you how bad it was. Like I remember the days I used to go on company's site, like you need to go there and see the supply chain, how it's
Oh,
made, and
man.
then you need to fill the forms, like how many of these would you like, and then I was like, and then the stamp was like, man, this is gonna take forever. Like I understand why people who have supply chains set with China don't want to move them away that fast, because if you go to Vietnam and stuff, like you're gonna be back to like China 10 or 15 years ago, if not 20 years ago, and you have to
Rough.
deal in person and fill the form. I was like, oh man, like no, no.
Man,
So Alibaba,
you gotta fucking
so
DD shit in person. Like, go check
yeah,
it.
like yeah, go kill yourself. Like I'm no. And at least no, but at least Alibaba solves a very crucial problem of sourcing things in a somewhat efficient manner. And the best thing about Alibaba is like China has subsidized transport so much that you can find like key in like walk-in solutions, like door to door with like custom fees. Like everything is taken care of. So for people who are starting things here in the West, like you want to manufacture something, it's easy somewhat to do it. If you remove that, oh, it's gonna be like you're literally killing a lot of small businesses if you do that. You're gonna have to rely on larger conglomerates who already have established ties or offices in China to pick up the pace, because otherwise, a small companies will simply not be able to do that anymore. And let's put it this way: at least they put, I mean, Chinglophone people at the head of their like platforms, so you can have some kind of an exchange with them. But if
Bro,
you,
I've seen the exchanges. It's not pretty. It's not pretty.
no, but I mean, like, remove that, and the incentive to hire someone who studied, let's say, business English.
Oh, jeez.
Business English. Okay, but the incentive to hire that person will disappear, and then you'll need to reintroduce middleman.
So wait, hold on. Think about it this way, okay? Another thing is, if you dismantle Alibaba, right? Not only is let's say you just straight up kill it. Okay, the platform's gone. Not only that, you've killed off like major logistics, right? Alibaba has its own logistics arm, right?
Yeah.
It's not only like they don't only like transport shit, they have warehouses, sometimes cold chain logistics. So
yes, they do.
And shit, good luck. Like, where are you going to store this shit, right? Like, I don't think the state-owned enterprises can pick up this slack. Like, fucking no way, right?
And
yeah,
when you say that, you make me think of something else. It's not only about the Western side, but also like domestically. If you remove this interface, a lot of small producers will just have to go back to how it was during the 70s and the 80s. Like, you bring your stuff to an SOE or a state-owned like redistribution center, and they do the advertisement and the supplying for you, like market cooperatives, like this kind of crap. So this would be a major setback for local producer or able to advertise their products to foreign buyers. So this is definitely not a good idea. Is it the best solution? No. Is it a good thing to remove it? Probably not. Can you replace it with something more efficient right now? No. So you're kind of stuck with that. And again, if they could streamline the way it works, it would probably be better. But right now, there's no alternative to allowing buyers to find suppliers that is, I hate to use the word efficient, but I have to use it because, like, I mean, it's efficient-ish.
It's sufficiently efficient.
See, exactly. It's better than like you going on the plane, applying for the visa and stuff like this, and you land and you need to find the shop. Oh no, sorry man. Oh, they send you the minibus. I'm sorry. They send you the minibus, and then you tour the compound, waste a day, and then you go to the conference hall, the meeting room, and then you negotiate, and you go, hey, do you want to visit the factory floor? No, I don't want to visit the factory floor. Like, no, like, oh, I like, so the need for Alibaba won't rescind because of that.
Also, let's not forget, the Alibaba owns, to my knowledge, two major e-commerce platforms, right? Okay, people often think Alibaba as like the e-commerce platform. No, Alibaba is e-commerce platform for, I guess, major like distributors, so like kind of like industrial, like warehouse.
It's warehouse level, more like warehouse.
Warehouse level.
Yeah.
But there's also Taobao, Tmall, which are consumer, and
don't forget AliExpress.
Yes, and like, what are you gonna do with this? Like, this Taobao and Tmall are basically essential services in China now. Like, if you want in China, you have like three options: Tmall, Taobao, or JD. So
yeah, and I recall someone saying like, "Oh yeah, but JD can supplant Tmall." I was like, "Yeah, good luck with that idea. Good luck with that. Good luck with that."
And funny thing about that is I think it was JD who complained to the party, who was like, "Yo, Alibaba is fucking forcing merchants to only sign with them and not use our platform." I think
sucks to be you, man. Like, sucks to be you.
But I think an investigation later found out that JD was doing the same thing.
Yeah, no shit. It's just like Coke and Pepsi. Like, sometimes it's like, okay, if you sign an exclusivity deal with Pepsi, then you don't put Coke on the shelves. Like, yeah, that's just the way it rolls, man. Depends who pays the most. Like, that's it.
Yeah. But
like, I don't understand why crying foul. I just think it's because JD's pocket are not deep enough. That's the only thing. And again, typical behavior Crying foul.
Bro,
Crying foul.
let's also not forget their CEO and founder was accused of rape in the US and Australia. So, there's also that going on.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot. Like a total rapist. Like he's got that going for him.
Oh, it's not a good time for him. It's not good.
You see, this is the kind of guy who should disappear. Like he should just fade away and just step down. Like he shouldn't be there anymore.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the overall tech sector in China is gonna be a bit rough as we enter 2021 and move towards 2022. It's not gonna be.
Yeah, and yeah, no, definitely. And people are. I still don't understand why people invest so much in these tech sectors in China specifically. Because like,
Oh,
I mean, like,
oh,
I still, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Like
bro.
Alibaba was a time bomb to begin with, and when Jack Ma stepped down as CEO, it was like, oh yeah, he's taking a break. No, he's not taking a break. He's being pressured to step down. Like you don't get it. They just don't want him there anymore to control supply chains. That was as simple as that. Like people don't get it. That's a deal he struck with the party. That's why I think Jack Ma said at some point, like you want to be a very good friend with the government, but you don't want to marry it. That was kind of a rhetoric saying like, okay, yeah, I'm really being pushed aside. Yeah, you're being pushed aside because you're not doing the job the way the party wants you to do it. As
Yep,
simple as that. As
yep.
simple as that. And people often think like these are complicated stories. I mean, yeah, sure, massively complicated background, and like what we said about Chen Yun and stuff like this is just a part of it. There's much more to the story than that. Like the old mayor of Chongqing is even involved in that. The old governor of the central bank is involved in the Ant story. There's so many more players to that. So people say, "Oh, it's a financial conspiracy." Well, I mean, considering the fact it's not necessarily a crime, I mean, it's not really a conspiracy, but is it a plot? I mean, you could say plot something. Yeah, sure. Like, there's so many people involved in that. Because again, where are they going to make their money at that point? Because Xi Jinping just like slammed the hammer on natural resources. It's really difficult now to extort the system and to find rent. The real estate sector is under massive scrutiny for inoccupancy rate and stuff like this. And then you have anyway. So yeah, you see all of that.
Yep, and it's a there's a Chinese saying that says, the wheels of basically like the wheels of destiny are always spinning, and sometimes you're on top, sometimes you're on the bottom, and it's time to go down for Jack Ma right now, and that's whatever. You had your run, you had a good time, bro. Like just accept it. Your time is gone. What did the Renmin say again? It was like there's no, what was it about Jack
Oh
Ma?
yeah, it's not a Jack Ma era. It's there will be more. There will be more Jack Ma, and like the epoch or like the era made the Jack Ma, not the other way around. And this is very indicative of the party saying like, no, like you work for like China basically, not the other way around. And let's make that very, very clear. That's why people was like, oh yeah, like Xi Jinping visited this museum. I think about like
Oh, that
I don't
business dude.
uh, yeah, the business dude who literally in the other. Oh yeah, very good like business. No man, he went bankrupt at the end of his life. Like that. That's not a really good ending for the story. But like I get the point that he started a lot of companies trying to uh, supply jobs and stuff like this. I get it. Like you're working for the nation somehow, yeah. But in the end, he ended up bankrupt. So I mean, this message is confusing a little bit. Like, act more patriotic, but end up broke. Like, I mean, the incentive is unclear. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. Um, what else? Was that pretty much it, or anything
I
else?
mean, we could circle back to details at some point and talk about other things, but the main points have been made. Like, stop talking about like where is Jack Ma? He will just reemerge at some point. And the story about Alibaba is not as simple, or Ant Financial is not as simple as we think it is. So in the end, this is just business as usual for the party, and people disappearing is not something that's out of the ordinary. So just stop with that question. Like it's kind of annoying at this point. Yeah, kind of.
All right, I think that's a perfect ending.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, we're out.